Welcome to the High Note Podcast. I am Ted Zimnicki, founder of High Note Performance and HNPacademy.com, where we take the tools perfected by sports science and neurology and bring them to the newest breed of stage athlete to help them become the artists that companies can't help but hire again and again and again. In this episode, we get to sit down with Zack Wells, the executive director of ProMusica Arizona, to talk about all of the behind-the-scenes things that most performing artists never even think about. Zack is incredibly open and generous with everything concerning finance, fundraising, gifts, sponsorships, and ways to give to the organizations that mean something to you at $0 out of pocket. And if you are the type of singer that wants to leave no stone unturned, make sure you take the Mind-Body Connection quiz in the description down below so you can find out the best next steps for yourself to take advantage of all of the incredible advancements in sports science and use them for yourself. Without any further ado, here's Zack. Welcome to the High Note Podcast. I am Ted Zimnicki, founder of High Note Performance and HNPacademy.com, where we use the tools perfected by sports science and neurologists to stage athletes to turn them into the type of artists that companies can't help but hire again and again and again. With me today, I have a very special guest, someone who has a different perspective on the arts than the previous guests who we've had before. He is the executive director for ProMusica Arizona, one of the premier orchestral and choral and solo organizations. I've performed with them personally many years ago. In all of the state. And I could not be more excited to welcome Zack Wells. Zack, so nice to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. So you are the executive director of ProMusica Arizona, and we're going to get into the specifics of exactly what that means in a little bit here. But first of all, introduce yourself. How did you come to have the position that you currently do?
When I moved to Phoenix, I was hungry for a new musical outlet. And at the time, I was working with Craig Baumler at Unity of Phoenix. And he recommended one of his friends as a vocal coach because I was looking to kind of get back into the singing thing. And that happened to be Patty Grates. And when I went to a few lessons, she recommended trying out for ProMusica, which she just happened to be the artistic director for. So I went auditioned, I got in, I started singing with them probably 4 or 5 seasons ago at this point, and I loved it. And during that time, the existing executive director retired after 12 years. Um, so there was this job opening and opportunity, and I had a lot of, nonprofit background. So I thought, might as well apply. Let's see what happens. So after some arduous interviews and a very long journey, I was offered the position and I gladly accepted. And this is my second season as executive director. I still sing with them, of course, because you can't not want to sing. Um, and yeah, it's been a blast so far.
Fantastic. So what is an executive director and how is it different from an artistic director?
So in the broad sense, the executive director of a nonprofit is the equivalent of a CEO in a for-profit business. We are in charge essentially of day-to-day operations and basically shaping and enacting the vision of the organization. Um, the vision is always set by the board when a nonprofit is founded, and it's our job to do our best to make that come true.
So what's
So,
the vision for your current organization?
so our biggest vision and mission is to bring music to the North Valley of Phoenix because there was a lack when this organization started. It has since exploded in popularity. But that's still our biggest mission. And our vision is essentially to bring music to the underserved communities across the valley, which includes, retirement centers, some schools, basically anywhere that cost and admission prices and all that stuff might prohibit them from experiencing live music because we really want to share the gift of music with everyone that we can.
Mm.
And yeah, we've expanded and grown our outreach significantly just to match that vision. And then we also offer as affordable tickets as we can, just to break down that barrier of entry because we don't think music should be gate kept. And if a price is really keeping someone from experiencing it, we want to make it work for everyone. So historically, we've always given free admission to children under 15, students, that's anyone with a student ID, if they're a master's student or even high school, they get in for steeply discounted prices, and then senior citizens as well. And military, of course, they get a nice discount as well. So we want to make it as accessible and open to everyone that we can.
That's great. That's great. And of course, ProMusica has been just more and more successful with that as the years have gone on. You hit on one of my favorite words there, which is accessibility. And I know I've asked this question to other folks who have come on, people who run their own companies. Aside from ticket prices, what do you feel like ProMusica does to make music accessible?
So one of our biggest outreach groups is called Women in Song. It's a 16-member chorale of women voices, of course, SSAA. They do wonderful arrangements of, the classics and modern music, a cappella, sometimes with accompaniment, sometimes harp, whatever we can get. And they basically, especially around Christmas time, they will go to various libraries, high schools, retirement centers, memory care facilities, and just give free performances
Hmm.
because they want to make sure that, especially around the holidays when people are missing that crucial cultural part of their upbringing, they want to bring that to them no matter where they are and no matter the scenario. They just want to share the gift of music. And the biggest part of it is we hope to, inspire them to maybe start singing along. They can join us. Auditions are coming up, of course. Um, but really, we want them to uh, go back into their lives and just remember the joy they had during that concert of the singing and, really feeling connected to sometimes like the innermost aspects of your soul is usually tied to music. So we really want people to embrace that and to remember what it felt like, that joy. And yeah, so no matter where they are, we will find a way to bring music to them. And that's one of our biggest things is sharing music.
Hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. I would love to spend a little bit more time on the day-to-day work that an executive director does. Uh,
Yeah.
so before we get into your responsibilities now, can you tell us a little bit about the roles that you've had previously that gave you the kind of experience to step into this role comparable to a CEO?
Yeah. So most of my work history revolved around, well, it's very varied. I'm a very unique case, but a lot of it was general manager responsibilities, keeping an office or a warehouse working smoothly. That involves, people management, money management, all that fun stuff. Um, and then I got into the nonprofit side of things, and I was brought in as an IT expert of sorts. And it really divulged into if it plugs in, it's Zach's responsibility to take care of it. So in that time, I got to learn a lot of the ins and outs of nonprofit specifically and how different it was from anything I've experienced before.
Hmm.
And I also got to help in the day-to-day operations a lot with like the finance aspects of it and the QuickBooks and all the data entry and just seeing everything involved in keeping something running when you're not running for a profit. You don't have reliable, steady income because you're not selling something.
Sure.
So taking all of that combining it with the general manager day-to-day stuff, it really crafted this very unique experience that is me. Um, because I'm a very techie person. Um, and it really helped me look at the big picture, the processes, the everything involved in running an organization. And it's the perfect challenge for me because
Hmm.
each day is slightly different and there's always a new challenge and there's always a new goal to overcome. And yeah, it's just a really fun job. So all paths lead to nonprofit for me. So here I am now.
That's great. So, what are some of the big differences you found between a for-profit company and a nonprofit?
Well, the marketing is like the biggest thing that is different. And especially with an arts organization and a music organization, you're not selling a product, you're selling an experience. And it's very hard to convince people to spend the money to come see a show or even spend a whole evening with you because some of these shows, they could be 3 hours long, and that's a big chunk of time for some people. So it's very hard and takes a lot of creativity to really sell a product that's not a product. You're selling the experience, you're selling the time, you're selling what you hope they will feel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of times, it relies solely on video and audio, so you can give them a taste of what it is. But as you and I know, going to a live orchestra or a live show is vastly different from listening to it on your phone. And that is so hard to sell and convince people, especially if they've never been to a show before. Um, just the magic in that. Um, the other biggest thing is just the nature of income. With a nonprofit, especially with ProMusica, I think it's like 80% of our income is either donations or government grants. And that is very whim based depending on the donors. And
Hmm.
you try to plan ahead and like guarantee that that money is going to be there, but climates shift, cultures shift, political shift, like a lot of that plays into just the spirit of giving with people. And it's very hard to be like, okay, well, we really need this one thing. So let's ask all these people for a little bit extra. So it's not having some guaranteed way to earn more income is a big challenge, but it's also the best challenge. It's the most fun and rewarding if you can succeed at it.
Hmm.
Um, because it really shows that all these people believe in your cause and they love and support what you do. And even for me, if I didn't love and support music, I wouldn't be doing it. If I didn't believe in pro musica, I wouldn't have taken this job. Um, so it just really goes to show like just the spirit of a nonprofit is so vastly different because it's really passion based and passion motivated. And yeah,
Yeah, I love that perspective that you took on it, that it's the greatest challenge and it's something that's exciting to take down. When other people who I've spoken to who are thinking about starting their own companies or their own organizations, it's just such a daunting task that it's difficult to even take the first step. You mentioned the different streams of income for a nonprofit, at least for ProMusica, because that's where you have the most insight, obviously. Uh, 80% is from essentially not ticket sales. Uh,
yep,
and did a little bit of digging with the information, the link that you so kindly provided that showed, I believe it was the tax year 2022 of ProMusica's income. And just to get a little more specific, for anyone listening who hates numbers, jump forward because we're going to talk about numbers for a second here. But the total revenue for the organization was just under $150,000 for that year. And comparatively, the ticket sales were only about 26,000. So that's a huge gap to make
mhm,
up for. And of course, this was the first year that was even somewhat out of COVID.
Yep.
right? So I only imagine that the numbers are different now. Fingers crossed, the numbers are significantly higher, but that information is not public yet, so I'm not going to ask you to reveal it. Uh, how do you go about bridging that gap? Because it seems extremely daunting.
Yeah. So most arts organizations perform, like they give their shows, they give their stage plays, all that fun stuff at a loss.
And for
And
who might not know what that means, what does it mean to do something at a loss?
so it means that the money we spend to do a performance is more than the ticket sales. So if it was a bank account, it would be negative. So we're losing money essentially by sharing music with the people in the world.
Mhm.
Um, and like I said, that of course plays back to the whole passion and love of these nonprofits is they're willing to make that risk to share the gift of music with the world. Um, so when you're looking at the budget for the next year and you see, okay, so we have these grand visions and we have only 20% of our anticipated budget is ticket sales, we can approach it in a lot of different ways. One of the most popular that you may get emails about, especially in the spring, are giving campaigns. Um, and it's a very efficient and effective way for a nonprofit to really ask for a large sum of money. Um, and it's usually a spring campaign, and I've noticed that trend in a lot of nonprofits. Um, and they'll say, help us provide for the upcoming few months because between December and like October, which is a very wide gap, there's just a distinct drop off of gifts. And,
Interesting.
it has a lot to do with the holidays and all that fun stuff. So you have to find ways to give people reasons to give. And aside from just asking, we also do fundraisers and benefits. For ProMusica, we do something called a champagne salon, and it's usually held at a private residence up in Anthem. Um, the one we did this year, the house was basically a castle. It was a very beautiful house.
Oh,
And we bring in all of our performers will volunteer either to help like prepare food or serve food, or they will perform. We had a tuba concerto, we had string quartet, we had a jazz combo. It was a really fun evening. And then we also will have like a silent auction going on concurrently with that.
mm,
And it's just a fun way for the powers that be at ProMusica and like the musicians to meet the people that support us in a very more intimate setting. And then for them to be able to give above and beyond and see the immediate effects of their gifts. Um, and then, of course, we could always do more concerts, but like I said, most of them are performed at a loss. So the best way, of course, is asking for more money from donors. The next biggest source of income would be applying for more grants. And Arizona has a massive support of the arts in terms of the government.
hmm.
Um,
That's not something that gets talked about very much.
no. And every year there's a big concern that they're going to cut the budget for the arts.
That's something that gets talked about a lot.
Yes, you will often see emails saying, please reach out to your local government and tell them how important the arts are. Because the biggest thing with the arts is the people that love the arts know how important the arts are. The people that are not very familiar with it kind of view it as, people in costume on a stage being silly, or, you know, a group of people singing karaoke kind of thing. Like they don't understand the impact of it. So Phoenix itself in Arizona, we have been abundantly uh, supported by the government, especially City of Phoenix, the Arizona Commission on the Arts. Like all of those organizations truly believe like the heart of culture is through the arts, and they support big and small, almost every music organization, well, every arts organization, theater organization, all of that. Um, but of course, that's limited because it's based on what the government says they are allocated. Budgets are limited and they're unreliably predictable. So,
Unreliably predictable.
yeah, so you know the money will be there, but you don't know how much will be there, and you don't know how much you can really ask for until after it's been set in stone. So,
Hmm.
like, we can anticipate we will apply for a grant and probably get a grant, but we can't anticipate how much it will be until, the government has their session and sets the budgets for the year. So it's very wait and see, but we know that they're there for the taking. So it's a really it's a hard predicament to be in because we rely on so much of grants and donations, but we don't know if the grants aren't there, then we have to lean heavily on donations. If the donations aren't there, we have to lean heavily on the grants. So it's a very tricky balancing act. And like I said, it can sway so easily based on, politics, culture, was July too hot? Like it could just be a lot of different things that really impact. And you don't realize how much an organization, especially an arts organization, really depends on every penny we can get.
Mhm.
Um, Especially there's some generous people that are donating hundreds of $1,000s a year
Wow.
uh, just for the vision that they believe in. And in an ideal world, we'd have more of those, but it's the people that are chipping in $5 here and there that really make a difference over time. And it's hard to convince people like $5 is a huge deal to a nonprofit, like, and encourage them to keep doing that because we appreciate every penny we can get. And we appreciate that you're willing to give it,
Mhm.
most importantly. So,
So it really is those by comparison to a whole budget, small, but it's those real grassroots donations that make up a huge portion of an organization's budget and spending.
yep. And a
Okay.
lot of it is, especially with Phoenix being the snowbird capital, people that don't necessarily come back for the shows or the concerts, they will still support us from afar.
Oh, wow.
And we love to see it. Like we can tell that we made a lasting impact on them and they still appreciate it. So they show their love one way or another. We would love to have them at the concerts, of course, but if they can't make it, I'm glad they still support us and they still are rooting for us one way or another.
Yeah. And just as a thought experiment, so that people listening can really kind of grasp the magnitude of what we're talking about here. Just going off the most recent public data, we've got about $125,000 to make up for, right? If ProMusica was to try and do that with just ticket sales, what would the ticket prices have to be?
Oh,
And we can sort of work through this together and do the math together because it just occurred to me that it would be an interesting thought experiment to do that. So I'm pulling out my calculator. Uh,
yeah, me too.
do you know about how many tickets were? I think this was 2022, right? Do you know
Yeah,
about how many tickets were sold in that year? That would be such a strange stat to pull out of nowhere. But
yeah. Probably 3,000 total.
3,000 tickets?
Yeah.
Okay, for the year. So if we're trying to make up $125,000 on 3,000 tickets, that would mean each ticket would have to cost an additional, let's just round up, an additional $42. Uh, and how much are tickets normally?
Um, I believe an adult entry ticket is 28.
28. So that would mean each ticket would have to be $70.
Yeah.
just to break even from 2 years ago,
Yeah.
right? So that's what it means when an organization does something at a loss. So for every ticket that you're selling, it could be argued that you're losing about $30 for every ticket that you sell.
Yep.
So $30, again, compared to $150,000 that we're looking at for a whole organization, $30 sounds like nothing. But if someone can give a little bit extra, it really does make a huge difference
Yep.
in the end there. Uh, I mean, that kind of just blows my mind that if you were a for-profit business, of course, which luckily arts organizations usually aren't, but you would have to more than double, almost triple ticket prices just to break even.
Yep.
Uh, I hope the people who have never looked at budgets before can appreciate that the next time you buy a ticket to anything,
Yeah.
any kind of nonprofit. Uh, so how does someone go about applying for some of these grants?
Well, there are organizations and websites that are dedicated to just collecting grant information, and it usually comes at a cost, and you pay to subscribe to see this magical list of grants. Um, One trick I like to use as a nonprofit is I look at similar organizations to ours and I go to their support page and they will list every grant they've received. And I will say, hey, they received this grant. Let me look into it. And then I will look into it and apply if it applies to us. And I encourage everyone to do the same. If you want to look at what ProMusic has gotten, it's all there. And you can, of course, apply for the same grants because we are all about sharing the magic of music. So it's not a competition, it's more of a mutual support. So I encourage everyone to look at this info and find funding sources they may not have thought of or had never heard of, because not only are there a lot of government grants because Arizona is so massive, but there are so many corporate headquarters in Arizona,
Hmm.
and they call Phoenix home. And they have budgets set aside for, community support. And what better way to support a community than to fund a concert or an arts organization? Um, Typically, we call those sponsorships. If they want to put their advertising in things, it's a sponsorship. Otherwise, they could just give us a grant and we'd be very happy to receive it. Um, there's a lot of organizations you wouldn't think to ask. Like Walmart has a very big charity section that you wouldn't even think of, walmart.org. Um, and it's tied to each and every local Walmart. So you can apply to the Walmart in Anthem and also North Phoenix and the one over in Mesa. Depending on where your performances are, you can apply to every Walmart if you wanted.
Hmm.
Um, and I know like Fry's has their community rewards, or Kroger's, or whoever it is around you.
Yeah.
That's a very easy way for people to passively give and support. A lot of corporations that people work with will do matching contributions. So you can talk to your payroll provider and say, hey, does my company do charity or contributions? And if they say yes, ask how to get that involved. Some companies will have, I think it's called it's technically a grant, but it's an employee guided grant. So they put in names of various organizations, and the company itself will pick a few names every pay period or every quarter and just donate to them on behalf of one of their employees. And it's always a wonderful gift to receive in the mail because it means someone was thinking of us enough to put our name in the hat for this thing that we had no way of anticipating or even knowing about. So there's all these little ways to really get involved that it doesn't take a lot of work. It doesn't take money out of your pocket either. And it's just, passively contributing to something you believe in. One of our biggest losses in terms of nonprofits was when Amazon Smile went away.
Mm,
because that was such an easy thing to get set up, and people were shopping on Amazon, especially during lockdowns.
yeah.
And it was just a very nice passive income because it didn't cost anyone anything and it just contributed to a cause. And they've since shuttered that. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, go ahead, research other organizations that are similar to you, see what kind of funding they're getting and see the sources. And you would be amazed at, the little shop down the street might be supporting, the Arizona Opera. And you would never think that. Because what would a hardware store want to do with an opera company? It's about really the passion of the music.
Yeah.
And yeah, do your research, snoop a
Yeah.
little bit.
And it seems like there's so many possibilities out there that most people have never considered, that I certainly have never considered, where you can support these organizations at no cost. You might have to send an email or two. Oh no. Uh, but there's all of these options that are there. So anyone listening, I encourage you to please talk to your employer, send an email to your HR department, and see what's out there. What are some of the things that you think are sort of misunderstood about the executive director role, about the fundraising role, especially misunderstood by the artists who are on stage?
Um, the biggest thing I've encountered is one, I am a performer. I am a professional soloist. I am a composer and arranger. I am an instrumentalist. I've done my share in the art world, but people see my title as executive director and they assume I don't know the arts. I'm there for the numbers and the business.
Mhm.
But really, I'm right there with the artistic director. We sit together and put together these programs and concert orders and the repertoire we choose. We like I don't know how it is for a lot of other organizations, but Patty Grates, who's the artistic director of ProMusica, she and I work very well together. And there's a mutual respect and understanding of we both know numbers and we both know art. And we make it work while maintaining our separate areas, but we're in it for the vision and mission of ProMusica. Um, I really wish more people would look at their executive directors and say, hey, clearly you do this because you're passionate about it. Like, what is your vision for our organization? Or like, how can we help, the executive side of things? Because the hardest part for an executive director in a lot of these organizations is we are behind the scenes for the most part. You'll sometimes see an executive director come out and introduce the concert if you're lucky. And like that's the only glimpse you get of them. Um, so we're behind the scenes, we're invisible compared to like the artistic side of it. And that's something we have to be okay with. We choose to do that. But really, the executive director is in it for the passion. They're in it for the art. They're in it for the creativity as well as the problem solving and the financials and the numbers. Like it's a very multifaceted position, but from my experience, people always assume that like I'm the boss guy. Like I sit behind a desk and crunch numbers and tell people what to do, but really it's I'm working with everyone to, enact our vision and accomplish all of our goals while being one of them, while being a performer, while being a passionate arts lover. Like that's that's the biggest disconnect that I've encountered. Um, the last concert ProMusica did, we actually premiered one of my works. It was an arrangement. And after the concert, a lot of people from our orchestra came up. They're like, well, we didn't know that you were a composer or an arranger. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm the Zack of all trades. I do everything.
The Zack
And,
of all trades.
but just the fact that I don't think it ever occurred to them that the ED would be someone like in the trenches with them, like supporting them and sharing gifts of the artistic variety. Um, So it was really funny to me to encounter that, but it's also like, well, yeah, it's what they've experienced in all the other organizations that they've been in. It's just how it's always been. Like it's like the myth of the two sides of the brain where one's creative and one's logical. We now know that's not really a thing, but there's the ED and the AD, and they're two sides of the coin, but really we're still the coin.
Hmm.
Like we have our strengths and weaknesses, but together we make one amazing product. So more people need to recognize the ED is really, an ally for them. We're in their court, we're in the trenches with them. I perform in the group, so I'm there. I'm at every rehearsal. Like I love singing and I love singing with the group. So it's just surprising and slightly baffling that they wouldn't think of me as an artist, even though I'm an artist first, an executive director second. Like, so that's the biggest misconception I would say about executive directors. Like, we're passionate people as well.
I wonder if some of that misconception comes from this idea of the starving artist, right? Where if you are involved in the arts, then you should have nothing to do with money. And like the arts are so pure that if you touch it with some shred of capitalism, then everything, falls away. And I don't believe that's true, but I know that idea exists in the lexicon, right? So when you meet a performer, a musician, a visual artist, any kind of artist who is well versed in financials, in numbers, who's not afraid to talk about, differential gaps and ticket prices and things like that, it's certainly not congruent with the way that people think about artists. And I say people meaning like every human in the world, right? Because that
Yeah.
starving artist image exists. Uh, do you think there's any validity to that, or am I just talking out of my butt?
No, I can definitely see that being the case. And I know ProMusica specifically, our previous executive director, she just was not involved. She didn't attend rehearsals
Hmm.
outside of selling tickets, and she did not appear on the stage ever. Um,
So she
and
was that figure sort of behind the curtain, behind the
she
desk.
was very happy to stay hidden.
Okay.
And, she worked her butt off. She was a very hard worker and she deserved her retirement. But I vowed, like, when I started, I'm going to change that because supporting an organization is also supporting their staff and their leadership. And, you know, Patty has no problem being in front of everyone and talking to the whole, audience and talking to all the musicians and really sharing ideas and really, making that connection. And I felt like that was really lacking for the ED side of things. So, like, that was my biggest push is, talking to each and every one of our musicians. I mean, the choir knew me, of course,
Sure.
but our our rehearsals are typically split up. So Monday nights is choir, Tuesday nights is orchestra, and then near the end, when it's, Hell Week, we combine everything and we don't get a lot of time to talk during that. So there was always, a Wizard of Oz impression of the ED is just the floating head that makes stuff happen. But I really wanted to connect on personal levels. And it's still, to your point, I think some artists believe that once money's involved, it has tainted the aspect of arts. But in my defense, if I'm not involved in the money, then they're not getting paid. So
Yeah.
it's the necessary evil here.
Well,
But I also
I don't
know
think it's
from
an
the,
evil. It's just a necessary part of performance.
yes,
Like the venue has to get paid, right? Artists like getting paid,
yep,
no matter what. So I don't think it's an evil. I just think it's a part of it that people don't like to talk about,
yeah,
which I also think is pretty silly. Uh, and it's part of the reason why artists sometimes stay starving when they don't have to, is because they're not well versed in their own numbers. Sorry, I derailed you. I
no,
apologize.
you're good. You're good. Um, I don't remember what I was saying, but it's okay. Um, yes, money makes the world go round. It makes art happen. And especially, ProMusica has over 100 members. Like, it's a lot logistically to make it happen, to ensure there's a venue for us to perform, to make sure the lights are out. Like, it's a big deal. And I think, to your point as well, there's always been like this stereotype of accountants are not creative people, or CPAs are very dry sense of humor, don't understand sarcasm, like they care about numbers and facts and figures, and that's it. So to meet someone entrenched in numbers but also entrenched in art, I think is, I wouldn't say it's unique. I'm sure there's millions of people like me, but to meet someone like, I was a performing artist before I was an executive director. And like, I think that has shifted how I approach a lot of the executive director things. And I think, not to toot my own horn, but I think it's kind of a refreshing experience for some people to see the ED like at a rehearsal with them, talking to them, contributing music. Like, I love doing it and I'm happy to do it. And I love that our members are really starting to embrace that and recognize that of me. And I hope that that could spread against or across all arts organizations. So if you're in a theater, maybe ask your executive director, do you want to write a musical for us? See how well that goes. But yeah, music is very much,
Was that you subtly dropping a hint that you would want to be commissioned to write a musical? Is that
oh, I don't
okay?
have time for that.
Just
I'll
checking.
write you a song. You can write the musical around it.
Okay,
But
just making sure.
um, music does involve numbers. Music involves math. Um, it's just the reality of it. It's science. It's all related. Numbers, music, drawing, painting, it's all brain activities. You're exercising creativity. And the biggest thing between numbers and singing, of course, is numbers typically have a right number or a right answer.
Mhm.
Singing is more up to the interpretation of whoever's listening. So that's the only difference I would say. So, we like numbers, we like music. It's all the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's much easier to change the world with money than it is to change the world with music. Not necessarily better, but it's certainly the path is more direct.
Yeah. And the payoff is more immediate.
Yeah. And even better if you can use all the money in the world to change the world with music by
Yeah.
donating to an organization like ProMusica. Uh, just had to sneak in that one other little subtle plug for
Yeah.
your organization, of course. Uh, yeah. So I feel like we're kind of wrapping things up. Do you have any sort of final words or little bits that you want to make sure people take away from listening to our conversation?
If you have been inspired, touched, moved, motivated, changed by music or art at any point in your life, please consider supporting them. Um, any organization will be happy to receive $1 from you. Um, don't feel like because you can't give $100 that you are less than or not worthy or that you shouldn't give. Please consider, every penny. Like I said, every penny adds up. We've had, 4 to 5,000 people coming to our shows over a year. If each one of those people gave an extra dollar, like that's a huge chunk of change. So never self diminish your gifts and always feel moved to show appreciation, because to a nonprofit, it makes all the difference in the world. Like, the fact that you are willing to give, the fact that you are saying, this organization changed me, this organization made an impact in my life, is huge to us because it's really affirming our mission and it's really motivating us to continue on and to really push to reach more and more people to maybe change their lives as well. So if you have ever been impacted by the arts, please consider making a donation to an artist that has made a difference in your life, or a theater company that did one production of a show that you fell in love with and have listened to the soundtrack on repeat. They need your support. They need your love. They need everything that you can give. And if you want to donate time as well as money, we're always happy to take that too. If you want to share your gifts, talents, anything like that, we're more than happy to hear what you got and see if you can, contribute to the big picture of things. Like if you've been inspired, please consider getting involved one way or another, financially, time-wise, talent-wise, even sharing posts on Facebook. You would be amazed at one share can make or break a concert's revenue
Hmm.
ticket sale goal. Like you could have shared the perfect post at the perfect time with the right person, and it could have just, helped an organization sell 20 more tickets. Like it's just little tiny things that you can contribute as a person that really, snowballs into big, massive things for all these organizations. And never be afraid to reach out to them. Executive directors would love to hear from you. Like share your ideas, share your favorite stories, share about the one song that you loved and you want to know more about it. Like our emails are always publicly available. Please send us an email. We as a nonprofit love to know that what we are doing is making a difference to someone, to anyone. And the best way to tell us is to tell us.
Executive directors, they're people too.
Yes.
I love it. I think that is a great final message. Anyone listening, just to reinforce what Zach just said, if an organization has moved you, prove it. Uh, Zach, thank you so much for your time, for your generosity. I'm sure ProMusica has benefited wildly from working with you. I see them advertising all over the place. They're all over my Facebook feed.
Well, you're welcome.
I appreciate it. I really do. And I'm sure the work that you and Patty are doing only continues to improve concert after concert after concert. Thank you so much for your time and for your openness. For anyone who is curious, links to everything that we talked about are going to be in the description down below, as well as Zach's email address. So you can contact him with your own ideas, or if you would like to donate, he will help direct you to the right place to do that. I will
Yep.
also include the link that Zach shared with me for looking up public institution financial data if you want to dive into those numbers and nerd out like I did over the last couple of days and look up all of your
It's a
favorite
rabbit hole.
organizations. Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole sometimes, but if you can tolerate looking at IRS font, it can be an interesting way to spend some time. And that's where we're going to call it for this episode. Again, Zach, thank you so much, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation as much as we enjoyed having it. Before you head off, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It is the best way to help the podcast grow so that we can reach more singers just like you. And don't forget to take that mind-body connection quiz from the description down below. Up till now, it has been this jumping off point for hundreds of singers who are feeling better, stronger, moving better, reducing pain, and really claiming their titles as performing athletes.